Hello, we're here in Adobe After Effects CS5, and we're going to take a look at BCC Beat Reactor. BCC Beat Reactor is a feature in Boris Continuum Complete version 7, and it exists as both a standalone filter and as a parameter group, integrated into specific filters. In some cases, we'll take a look at both ways to use it there. And specifically, we're going to look at focus more on how to isolate a really specific part of the sound that you hear, when you're working with an already mixed track, like a music track or something like that, which is often the situation you may find yourself in when working with it. So here I'm just going to preview. I've built a few previews, including some of the audio we'll be looking at in this movie. So that's got sort of a lot of high-end and some high-end sounds that we're after, that little ticking sound there. And this one, you see there as the music goes on, that kick drum kind of gets a little bit swamped by some of this sort of low-end synthesizer, some of these bass synth sounds that are in occupying some of the same frequency areas. So we'll have to figure out how to isolate that. And this one shows BCC PinArt 3D, which has an integrated beat reactor and some unique features in that as well. So we have a glow and this PinArt effect, and there's some advantages that can be had working with the integrated beat reactor as opposed to the standalone one as well. So we'll take a look at that. All right, why don't I start? This comp, as you can hear, already has this audio that we'll be trying to find here. This little. So there's this one. Drum sound where the text jitter is happening, and the other one where this animated leading between the two lines of text. So here I have an AE color layer and just the audio, and I'm going to apply from the BCC time category, BCC Beat Reactor. We'll use the standalone one. You see by default it's doing practically nothing. We need to tell it which audio layer, which layer to use. And if I preview the RAM here, by default, you see that the levels are kind of low in this file, and that's one thing, and that we'll want to adjust right away is the spectrum graph is a little bit too small here. So I will scale that up. This scale percent scales the whole graph, all the frequencies. So let me preview that again. You can see the change. So I'm starting to see some of my sounds a little more, but that little high-end tick-tick sound I'm not quite getting. One thing I can do here, which I think I'll need to do in this case, is increase the max frequency. And you see if I scroll a little bit too far there for a second. Something like this, and now we watch one more time. So it looks to me like in this area under my cursor, excuse me, is where the first sound I want to isolate is. Now I'll actually increase specifically the scale of it says the treble, so the high end, that blue end of the frequency, the spectrum graph there. All right, so now I can kind of see, somewhere in here is that sound. So why don't we take sampler 1, my sampler rectangle, and go to a frame where there's some activity in that area, and just kind of grab that. And now we're watching, see what this is all about as you kind of refine your selection is watching the output meter here. This meter represents the output of what you're sampled here. So watching this very carefully and listening carefully at the same time. So you see, that's not bad. It's definitely getting the sound I want, but it's also getting some other stuff there. So one way to isolate it even further and to visualize it sometimes even better, there's a couple more adjustments we can make. One is this smoothness value. It kind of smooths out the motion of the spectrum graph somewhat, which can be really useful to have it be a little smoother. But in this case, there's these short little bursts of sound, so I really need it to be accurate. Still doesn't look like I'm able to get it that well, or to see it so well. So I'm going to increase the frequency resolution, which is another unique feature in the beat reactor. So now look right under my cursor, that band right there, that pretty clearly is what I want. So and I can see that just by watching it and listening. And so if I go here, let's try this. So that's pretty good. I have a little bit of headroom. It's not peaking out here at all. And I'm not getting any extraneous stuff down here either. And you can even see, you know, the little 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that they're actually different levels. They're not all the same strength, and you actually see that reflected in this output. So it's a pretty good, you know, depending on how we use that, it'll really match the sound nicely when we use that, link it to a visual effect. While I'm watching this, I also see, look under my cursor here at the green and listen. That little tap, tap. Some of them are only going about halfway up, and some of them are going all the way up. And then this red is another really identifiable sound that could be used nicely for visual effects, I think. So if I, so right now sampler 1 represents this. I'm going to switch to sampler 2 and scroll to one of those frames where we got the big green bar there. And maybe see how this works out. So you can see it's getting, these are the softer ones, and that's the stronger ones. And switch to sampler 3 and look for the ones in the red area there. Try that. See a softer and then a harder one. It's actually going a little bit high. I don't like it to sort of go out of the range because then I don't have the full motion to work with. All right, so we've isolated 3 sounds in there. And if I do it this way, if I set output A to sampler 1, output B to sampler 2, and output C to sampler 3, now if we watch this outputs over here, so that looks pretty good. That's useful. But one nice thing, and again a unique thing to Beat Reactor, is that I don't have to have them all be on separate outputs. Just here in output A, I have the option of sampler 1, 2, and 3. So what it's doing is creating this output range, which is adding all of these three together, and then seeing how much of that is filled at a given time. But maybe even more excuse me, useful is this max in this case. So you basically see we're able to have three of these three sounds isolated from this music track, and they're all channeled into a single output for use just in a single filter instance. So there's really a lot you can achieve that way, being able to use multiple samplers on a single output. Here again, so you see that one, what we used as sampler 1, and so I have A. A is doing that text leading thing. The jitter is from value C. We're not actually using B yet, so let's take a look at B and think of a way to use that. More unique features here, keyframe output. So we can output to the value, which is pretty straightforward. It's just outputting a value. You specify the range here, fall off options and stuff like that are really nice and useful, fall off time. But you can also multiply by the value. You can output to a checkbox and have that toggle on or off based on like a threshold. And then there's this output to color one, which I thought would be a cool thing to show here. And let me just actually enable the layer. So if I generate output B, now that I've set it to output to color. Okay. Now if I preview this, look at output B's meter here. You see how it's actually, when it's at its highest, 100%, near its 100%, it's the yellow. I'm using this middle color, and then when there's nothing, it's this red color. So it's basically this sort of gradient in time. It's outputting an actual color parameter. And if I type the U key here, so we see animated, you see that represented here in the timeline as well, outputting a color. Now I have an adjustment layer with a BCC colorize filter applied to it, and if I alt-click on this color 3, that automatically adds an expression, and all I'll do is I'll take the pick whip here and link it to my color. And now if I preview to RAM, you see what you get, that this color, on the given frame is being output onto this effect. And if you think of all the parameters and all the filters that have color parameters in them in After Effects, and how much you're working with color, it's a really sort of fun and useful thing to be able to have audio really easily and simply drive a color parameter. So it's just another example of kind of a unique thing that you can do with Beat Reactor. Another kind of unique Beat Reactor feature here is, let's say you sort of really simply, you liked what it's doing, let's say that beat that causes the text jitter, but you didn't want it to always be causing it on every beat, or you wanted the effect of that to sort of fade up over time, the effect of the audio on the text jitter. Well, we know that the text jitter is output C here. So if I go into output C, you'll see there's the scale output percentage. So if I create a keyframe here, and whoops, I don't want it to go negative right now, I want it to go 0, and go down towards the end, and let's say make it 150, or maybe 100. You can go beyond the original amount too. And now if I preview to RAM, you see that the first jitter is pretty light, and the next one is a little much more stronger and noticeable. Oh, you know what? Actually, I forgot to generate output C. Sorry about that. That's why the effect wasn't as pronounced. Now we should see. So there's just a very slight jitter, and now a stronger jitter. That's one important thing which I actually just forgot for a moment is adjustments made in here. You need to actually generate the output for them to be updated in the final effect, because it's adjusting the actual keyframes that are generated. So that's important to do. But so that's a useful thing to be able to do. If I go here and type the U key again, so this is my scale output again. So it's interpolating between 0 here and 100. If I didn't want any text jitter, on that first one, you just create a new keyframe and make this 0. And now it's just going to ignore that first drum beat. Again, I forgot to generate. Sorry about that. And if you decide, hey, my range here 0 to 80 was maybe not strong enough, but you could change this. But the other thing you could do, of course, is just simply increase the value here. And then you're going to get a bigger text jitter on the end. So it's just a way to scale the the effect, the overall effect of the output. And that's a unique feature as well. Why don't we try and isolate something in another audio? I showed this one before. So let's do some of that. Again, so this is a comp that has that audio and just a AE solid color layer. So apply Beat Reactor and select the file. So you see that first time you see the kick drum, it would be pretty easy maybe just to grab an area, but then later when this kick drum repeats itself, there's more going on in that frequency area. So one thing that I would probably do again is adjust the audio spectrum options. Why don't we just turn off smoothness altogether and give us a 64 bands. Preview once more and watch really closely while listening here. Somewhere here. All right, so I thought I kind of saw this one look like a good candidate. I'll preview it again, watching the output this time and listening. So I got it, but I can see that I have a little bit there of that low synthesizer rumble entering, and I don't kind of want that so much. So let's see what we get here. Lower it a bit to really fill the output. So that worked. I also saw some kind of interesting stuff going over on the high end there. So if I boost this up a bit, and we watch over here. So right under my cursor there, you kind of maybe saw that sort of sound. It's kind of like a hit on the rim of the snare drum kind of sound. Why don't we enable another output, another sampler, just grab it there, maybe there. I think some of them, again, there was like a higher, softer and not as softer and harder tap on there. Probably lower that a little bit. And yeah, so you see in the finished movie I used the bass drum part to jitter the text, and actually that little rim hit is flickering the light source, so that's what it looks like. So those are a couple examples using the standalone Beat Reactor. Another really nice option that I mentioned before, if I preview this one to RAM, is this option for add to value. And what it's output B that's doing that. You see that when these high end, again, there's sort of a lower end drum and some higher end stuff going on, and I had the entire 3D text is rotating once around, but I still wanted the rotation to start at 0, end at 360, but be influenced by the by the sound in between. And the way I was able to do that, actually, I can kind of reset it here. So I just turned off keyframing for output value B. So it's 0 on this frame, and if I go here and make it 360, Now if I preview just a little bit of it, you see, okay, so it's doing the text jitter, but the spin part is just doing a 0 to 360, just a linear, at this point, interpolation. But if I generate these keyframes, I see I have it set to add to value, and I have the range going negative 31. Actually, if I wanted to maybe make it go a little bit more, I'll change that a little. And if I generate output B, and I preview it, then it looks like this. So when this high-end sampler gets activity in here, it's rolling its rotation back, negative 41 if it was totally full, but it's never really totally full, so it's less than that, but you get the feel for it. So it's another really useful thing, and I've even done effects where I would change the ranges. You could even change where the sampler is and then leave it on add to value and then just generate again without deleting your old keyframes, and you can have sort of multiple audio influences, patterns, all going into the same output that way. So that add to value, multiply by value, these additional output options are actually really useful in Beat Reactor. Now, let's just take a look at this effect finally. Here's the integrated Beat Reactor. I'll preview this once more. Why don't we deconstruct this one a little bit? PinArt 3D. You see that there's a Beat Reactor group in here, and right now it's using this audio track. And it's set actually I'm also using it on a glow effect. Let me just turn off the glow for a second, because that's the graph we were looking at was from the glow effect. So show graph, you can choose only in draft mode with a black background, which can be, you can adjust the transparency of that black background, but I'll just say yes now. Show the graph. And so you can see what the cool thing about this is you don't have to actually generate keyframes. It's not actually doing it that way, so it's just sort of internally affecting the parameters. So this dispersion map, which is affecting this stuff out here, if well, first of all, one thing I should show is this propagation mode. See how it says inside to outside, and it says propagation time in seconds. It's almost 1 second. If I turn off propagation, then it'll disperse the whole thing all at once, right? Which maybe that's useful, but if with propagation on, again, I'll choose inside to outside. Now it starts in the middle and sort of ripples outward because I chose inside to outside over time. So that's another level of effect capability that you actually wouldn't have with the standalone Beat Reactor. So having it integrated in this case is really nice. Another nice thing about having it integrated is simply this, that like I mentioned, you don't have to generate keyframes. So if I say apply strength, I can just do this, turn it down, turn it up, and right away I see, okay, that's what the effect's going to be. I don't have to generate and then preview again and stuff like that. So it can be a quicker workflow. Same with fall off time. Take longer for the effects to die down or die down quicker, and you're going to get that shorter. See the effects of these changes right away. Any of the effects, changes you make in the Beat Reactor group, you'll see quickly. Another nice aspect to the integrated one is you can these presets you can load and save presets. So if I've already got exactly the audio isolated the way I want in one filter, I can then go load it in another filter. So if I turn this off here and I just scroll down to my my glow filter, so here you see that I was able to basically load the same preset into glow. So that's what it looks like with only glow. And then if I enable the sound layer for this, excuse me, for the PinArt 3D, I'm doing both dispersion and the shift. So the actual, how far the white, the more higher luminance areas are shifted, is affected by the audio. So again, the final effect is kind of nice. Now I'm glowing this audio spectrum as well, which in this case I would usually turn off the audio spectrum for the final effect. So yeah, that's, it's integrated in. There's a list on borisfx.com of what filters in BCC have the integrated beat reactor, but it's in I think some glow, some light rays, stuff like that. A nice variety for using it in effects, and of course the standalone one can be used for any parameter in After Effects, not just Boris Continuum parameters as well. So it's a really powerful feature in Boris Continuum Complete 7 and has some really unique functionality, like I mentioned. The ability to have the frequency resolution increased in the spectrum graph, the ability to have multiple samplers for a single output, the scaling of the effect over time, that parameter, and then integrated into filters. It's a great new feature in Boris Continuum Complete version 7 for After Effects.